So welcome everybody, late in the afternoon. Welcoming you everybody here to our driving profitability through standardization in vertical farming. We come here to you as an ecosystem, and I'll let everybody of our colleagues and friends here introduce yourself, and then I'm going to contextualize a little bit why we believe that standardization will really help driving vertical farming into profitability. And then at the end of the course we have a little bit of a Q&A for everybody that's still here and is interested. So I'm very happy to welcome Tisha Livingston to us. Maybe Tisha, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello. There we go. Okay, I'm Tisha Livingston. I am the co-founder of 80 Acres Farms, and I'm the CEO of Infinite Acres. So we are a US-based vertical farming company, and currently have 4 farms that we're producing. And then we also have a field lab and research lab in the Netherlands.
Ellis, very welcome to you as well from Signify.
Yes, indeed. Hi, my name is Ellis Janssen. I work for Signify, which is the name of the former Philips Lighting. I work for the division of Philips Horticulture LED Solutions, where we develop LED lighting for greenhouses and vertical farms. And I'm responsible for the business of vertical farms, growing our own stuff in the Netherlands, but especially working with customers to make the best lighting solution for their farms.
And very much welcoming you as well, Michele, Savino.
Welcome. Michele Savino. I am from SIC, a German family-based company. We are known as a sensor manufacturer, and we can offer our sensor also for the indoor vertical farming plants, and we are here also to support the integration of the sensor in the ecosystem. Thank you.
And another food lover, Schneiders from Siemens. May you introduce yourself as well?
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Schneiders. I work for Siemens. We know all Siemens. We are focusing. We're developing automation and digitalization solutions. We're collaborating with 80 Acres on a lot of aspects to automate the farm. And I'm heading the future food department within Siemens, focusing on sustainable food production.
And I might introduce myself, Bettina, Rotermund, also from Siemens. I'm responsible for bringing up an ecosystem of ecosystems. So in this case, we are talking about an ecosystem of vertical farming and controlled agricultural environment. So let me contextualize a little bit why we think that standardization and ecosystem and collaboration in an ecosystem is worthwhile to do. So we believe it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes somehow a village, in the sense an ecosystem, to do things right in the industry. Yeah? And if you want to transform digitally, if you want to bring up something that is fully automated, you need to share visions and aims and purpose, and you need to bring the right people to the table. And this is what you see here in this panel. These are all people that share the same purpose, that want to make vertical farming profitable, that want to make vertical farming scalable in the sense, yeah? So that it all makes sense for us. So we bring together everybody that is needed in this ecosystem to pursue this vision, because a single seed does not make a salad. Yeah? So we need to bring everybody. We have Signify here for the lighting, we have SIG here also for the sensors, we have Siemens here for making sure that the automation works, and the data fabric brings all the different data streams together. And we have our beautiful master use case, Tisha here with 80 Acres, where everything finally and eventually needs to come together. So what is the prerequisite of making that happen? If we want to have an ecosystem that is thriving, you need to foster the interactions between the players. So everybody should win. We want to create a win-win-win-win-win-win solution for everybody. And that means when we look into everything that needs to come together, the main principle that sorts all of this is the openness. Everybody needs to bring something to the table, otherwise it will not work. Otherwise we leave out somebody, or otherwise we lose the opportunity of scaling. And you might think, oh, that sounds very, very tricky, and we come to this later in our panel discussion as well. What about my IP? Ooh, this is a scary, scary story. I tell you what, Everybody of you is sharing a bit of your personal IP if you're using Google Maps every day, but you get something back in return that is valuable to you. If you're in a city like Berlin, you have never been before, you can easily get lost, you have Google Maps, you give your data, but you get something in return. You also know something in terms of standardization and standard that's also very meaningful for you, because it tells you something is trustworthy, which is the ISO standard that most of us know from big companies. When they abide to these standards, then you know from a compliance point of view, from a process point of view, these are good companies to deal with. But you also know that from your personal life. Everybody that has a mobile phone and want to connect to something, being it your box, your music box, being it your TV or your car, we all use the same standard, which is Bluetooth. Yeah? And Bluetooth was designed to make sure that whatever device you have in your pocket, you can connect it to your car with a couple of clicks. It makes it very, very simple and very, very easy. People are used to these kind of standards. Now comes the point. We do have a couple of these standards in the industry, but not that much. Yeah? And that's why what we do and want to do is we want to bring people together to create a standard, and based on this standard, then the whole ecosystem can thrive, because we already sorted out what is needed from whom at what point in time, and how do we contextualize data. So if you look into data that is coming from irrigation systems, or data that comes from lighting systems, and data that comes from condition monitoring, they literally have all their different ontologies and semantics. They all speak in different language. It's like Dutch and Chinese and German and Spanish and all at the same time. How would you ever make sense of it? So in Tisha's case, if she wants to look into the operation of her vertical farm, how would she ever know what is working well, what is not working well, if there would not be a data fabric in the middle that connects all the different data languages into one meaningful dashboard, into one meaningful setup that you can look in anytime, actually from everywhere in the world. Because the aim of the game is not to have one vertical farm, but multiple vertical farms in the sense of scaling. So contextualizing data also in different environments and setups becomes very, very meaningful. Now at Siemens, we look at ecosystems in a way of a platform that we create that is called Siemens Accelerator. And the aim of the game is to bring everybody together in order to make it work. And it can be different things and different purposes. In this case here today, we talk about controlled agricultural environments or vertical farms. And you can look at it, how do you want to structure ecosystems? And at Siemens we say we need to come away from ecosystems to ecosystems. That requires an openness first and foremost. You need to share data and you need to share your knowledge with somebody else so that everybody can thrive. That's why it needs to be open, and we want to invite more partners to this ecosystem to be part of it. That's also about the innovativeness. We really need to drive innovation, especially in this very, very important field. We have a growing population on Earth that needs to be fed sustainably and healthy. And this is why we need to share what we know in this sense, so that everybody can thrive in this ecosystem. And now you might think, ooh, Siemens, this super giant. That is totally irrelevant. Size of companies is not important. It is what you bring to the table, what kind of capacities you have, and what kind of interest you have to be part of this ecosystem. And that's why we all sit here today in the sense of collaboration, learning from each other, but also thriving with each other. Because we truly believe in the sense of Metcalfe's law, the more you add to the ecosystem, and you see that in this beautiful red arrow, the more value is created, the more participants are in this kind of sector. Yeah? If you can only phone one person, that's pretty boring after a certain amount of time. If you have more people in your ecosystem you can phone and they can phone each other, then we have a story. So this is exactly what we mean with ecosystem. The more diverse partners, the more partners of the same attitude and same thinking we bring to the table, the more scalability is a topic that we are looking into. So now let me get the ball running, and I come over to all of you for a couple of questions and a couple of stories. So I don't have my mic. And maybe Tisha, you can explain as the master use case for acres and 80 acres, the sense of with people sitting here next to you and Siemens.
Thank you, Bettina. So I am because vertical farming is really hard. And I don't know if everybody quite knows that or understands that, but it's really hard. It's really hard to bring everything together, to be able to figure out how to grow the plants, how to create, through these islands of automation, the perfect environment, how to be able to control your system end to end, from sowing all the way through to distribution, and making sure that you can constantly optimize it to be able to hit the right unit economics. So an ecosystem for me, and what we call, 2019 Green Tech, I said that we were embarking on egoless collaboration. We need egoless collaboration in order to be successful as an industry, and that's been the philosophy at 80 Acres and Infinite Acres. How can we bring partners together that are like-minded, to be able to develop technology and really be able to scale it? Because if it's just 80 acres, it's just me and Mike and our teams trying to solve this huge problem, this complex problem, we can't do it alone. We need bright minds around the table that have deep industry expertise in order to be able to truly drive a scalable, sustainable model for vertical farming in the future.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And Ellis and Michele, may I ask you, so what drives you to participate in this ecosystem as a provider?
Yeah, what we've seen in the past is that there are a lot of companies developing all kinds of solutions, but there's not one standard one. And of course we develop our own lighting system, own lighting solution, but ideally you develop it for as many customers as possible. And in order to make that innovation as efficient as possible, it's interesting to collaborate and learn from each other how we should make our own lighting system apply to, talk to, as you mentioned, to all the other verticals in a vertical farm. Because if we increase lighting or decrease lighting, that does have an impact on climate or vice versa, and what to do with your nutrients. And it's really important that all these verticals communicate to the best, to optimize yield, to reduce cost as much as possible. And for us, collaboration is key. We only do lighting, with all respect, and it takes a village to grow a child, but it also takes a lot of verticals to grow a lettuce. And the better our lighting is suited to that, and the easier it's able, the customer are able to use our lighting, the better it is. So we hope to increase the reach, the usability, the innovativeness, and in the end, the ease of use of our lighting solutions.
Thank you. Michele, what does it mean for you?
Yeah, so basically in our philosophy there is always innovation. And if we think the first sensor that our founder, Erwin Sick, more than 75 years ago invented and developed, that was a gas analyzer, a lot of innovation we have developed in these years, and today we have more than 40,000 different sensors available. And what we are looking for day by day is still to innovate, and participating, collaborating is at the base for the development of new innovation. And it's fundamental to collaborate, because basically we offer what we have, but we listen what they need. So the application needs and the customer needs. And this is a path in our philosophy and in our business identity. And SIC is always looking forward for new application, developing technology, using available technology, and adapting to specific solution and application that we want to solve.
Thank you, Michele. And maybe Rick, why is then standardization so important? So why can't not everybody throw their individual solution onto the market? And why would that be maybe so hard for Tisha to bring up their vertical farms in a scaling mode?
Yeah, no, of course. We started collaborating with 80 Acres, I think 3 years ago, something like this. And what we see is actually that vertical farming in itself is a super complex system. If you look to a vertical farm itself, it's almost an automated factory. So if you look to other vertical markets, like other factories, there you see a lot of systems, they're all connected to each other. You have one operation system, and every single element in that factory is connected. And you basically run that whole factory on data. Data is probably the most important resource to drive your factory. Because if you have multiple factories around the globe, you need to exactly know what's going on via one dashboard, seeing your whole OEE and operating your factory. So if you replicate this to farming, you basically seeing that this market of agriculture coming now into one box, a vertical farm, where you have the seeding, you have the growing, and you have the harvesting, and you basically want to control the whole process. So what you do now in the vertical farm is that you have all these machine builders that are also active in the greenhouse market. They're suddenly being put in one box, but they are just not communicating to each other. And now we have Tisha with a really big challenge because she cannot really steer her vertical farm to the highest as possible because she wants to optimize her farm continually. And what we see is that all these machine builders, they have really great value products. They have really good machines. But in the end, every single element in the farm, you need to connect. So if you talk about standardization, and I like the same vision, we talk now English and everybody understands each other. The same counts for devices. So what we now see is that in the industry is that a lot of devices are not talking the same language. So if you want to operate your farm, basically you need to have a farm management system above it, and you need to have all the data available. So what we now see about collaboration through the whole ecosystem is that we need to start working together of one standard, one communication standard. And it doesn't need to be that everything needs to be from one brand, from Siemens or from another. It needs to be that there is a standardization when it comes to data protocols. Because this is really a key element. In other industries, they already have done it. For example, the automotive industry, that's a great example where standards are already being implemented, where you in the end know as a supplier, if I follow these standards, I know that I'm making the right end product. And this is actually where we stand today, that we are defining, that we're collaborating to really create standards to scale faster.
Thank you. Maybe to all of you, so we heard about standardization is nice and connecting devices, but I believe everybody of you has an IP to protect. So how do you go about this in this collaboration mode?
Yeah, that is the tricky part, right, with vertical farming, because everyone out there is out there fundraising. We're all talking about how our technology is unique and it's special. And if we're collaborating, we're using the same language, you're using the same control systems. How do we differentiate? I believe that in vertical farming, we need the standards so that we can scale fast. But we have the data, and what we choose to do with the data as an operator, and how we optimize our farm using that data is really what sets us apart. So for me, what the machine builders are doing, what the equipment suppliers and the integrator is doing is not necessarily the differentiation for me. The differentiation is after I have that data, what do I choose to do with it? How is it I can take action on that data, control my systems, improve my quality, improve my sales and my operations planning so that I don't have any waste through my process? How is it that I can do all of those things so that I can win as a vertical farmer? So it's really about my data and what I choose to use, how I choose to use my data, how I choose to optimize my data. That really is what I protect.
Ellis, Michele, so what is IP for you and how you protect it in an ecosystem?
Yeah, in the end and in the beginning, we sell lighting. We don't sell IP. So our business is based on selling lighting, and therefore you need innovation. And of course, there are IPs that are related to our luminaires. That is logical because that's our core. But that's not at the table. We are not producing each other products. We are trying to work together and innovate together to make the 1 and 1 3. So to make the whole system better. So maybe our IP department sees it differently, but I did check up front. But the goal is in the end to drive innovation and only give licenses where needed, but not hamper innovation. And that might end up sometimes in discussions, but that's where there is an ecosystem. You need to trust each other, and you also need to be convinced of your own capabilities and forces. And if we are convinced of our lighting, and we together develop something that can improve in the end the business of the vertical farming by changing something to the lighting, including climate, then I think we all win. So for me, it's a matter of trust, it's a matter of protecting your core, but especially accelerating innovation. So yeah, nothing more to say. And just one more thing, actually. I think it's even good to be challenged, to innovate. So if somebody is having some ideas on the lighting, okay, then we can. Then we need to know that we need to be smarter, faster, or better in a way. So
Totally.
please come.
Yeah. And before we go to you, Michele, maybe allow me one thing to add. Smarter, I think, is the word. Yeah. So not every one of us has all the answers, and we figure it out together, and we are learning together, and we're making mistakes together, and then we say, was not the smartest way. Let's undo, let's redo it, and learn from each other, and everybody brings something in the sense of a swarm intelligence to the table that is working very, very nicely. So it is something that I was viewing in this collaboration so far. Michele, over to you.
Yes, similar to the Ellis answer, because we are data generators, so our sensors are generating data, so it's not a data protected by intellectual property. Of course, if we are innovating with the new technology, we are patenting the technology. SIG has a lot of patents, and this is a tricky point, but of course to collaborate, to know which data we have to generate, we have to be open, so we cannot stay on our side only, and we have to open our mind. And I would like just to remember our motto is sensor intelligent, punkt. This is our company.
Nicely said. Very well. So Rick, maybe to you and to Tisha the question. So how to get started? So how do we form an ecosystem? How do we bring people together? So what is it that you have experienced, because you were traveling the world, you were forming this ecosystem, and you were really the pulling all the people in. So what is it for you? How do you get started with this ecosystem? How do you do that?
Okay. Well, I think it's good for us to really come together. So the first step is always I think today is a great example of companies, or all different companies. We have a sensor company, a light company, and of course a customer and a company from Siemens, from Signify, and from SIG. So it's all being that the word use case, because it's really you need to create something. Because we can talk for ages for talking what way we want to go. In the end, it's just starting really to do something, but also to collaborate. And of course, I also want to touch up on the previous point shortly about IP, because I think what is really important, what we all should not forget, everything what we are making is in the end for the people that are really growing these crops. All the technology that you see here today, also what we are developing, we do it in the end for the companies that are really making it, that they're needing it. So I think what we always should have in mind is that how can we develop technology, solutions, use cases that are in the end always of value for the people that need it. So what we see actually by the collaboration with 80 Acres is that there is actually a lot that we can do together, but only we as a company, we cannot really help them further, because we're also only a piece in the puzzle. So I think with digitalization in general, we are all having a really big task where we want to go, but we also cannot do it alone. So the only power is by doing it together. And if you can really find like-minded companies, like-minded people, because it's not only about a company, it's about an whole ecosystem. Meaning you need to have universities, you need to have startups, you need to have all different kind of companies with cool new ideas, and in the end work on something higher together. And I think if you really come up with a platform where you find a safe space where everybody can share his ideas, where you can really scale, you also benefit from that. Because in the end, the whole platform, the whole ecosystem is that you give something, but you get more back in return. And everybody scales from it. And I think this is the first steps that we need to make. And I think it's a great example, like today, that we are really working and seeing that collaboration is the key to really come and drive digitalization.
Yeah, and I think that, so Rick and I have been a bit on a journey in figuring out how to create this ecosystem. And it's a lot of conversations. It's conversations with every single one of the equipment suppliers. So when I think about the layout of my farm, I have islands of automation. And every time I have islands of automation, I have data that I can't get out exactly the way I need it. I can't monitor and control the system the way that I want to. I need to have a conversation with that equipment supplier. I need to have a conversation with their innovation and their roadmap. And that's what we're doing. We are going one by one and talking to people and seeing if we can't figure out how to have our roadmaps collide so that we can figure out how to make vertical farming successful. How is it that we can improve the number of farms that I can build? I can improve my OPEX, I can improve my CAPEX through my operation, which means that I can then have more positive farms, I can have more profitable farms so that I can build more farms. And then how do we show that equipment supplier that if they're open and they have an open platform and they have standard language that they're using that everyone else in our industry will be able to pick up and run with and integrate with, that improves their total addressable market as well. The stronger vertical farming is, the stronger our industry is, the more collaborative we are today, the more we have opportunity to be successful in the future. Sometimes, Mike and I, my business partner, we have intense discussions about how open we should be, how closed we should be. Should we be looking for this ecosystem and figuring out how to build it together? And I have to say that every time I have an opportunity to talk to an equipment provider or another grower who's doing a vertical farm somewhere else, and we talk about how we can figure out how to advance the industry, I continue to be reassured that this is the right thing to do. We need to be open. We have a very challenging time ahead of us in vertical farming. Everyone isn't going to continue throwing money at us, and we can't build expensive farms and only have lettuce for the rich. If we want to solve our problems and this is not a solve, if we want to help solve food production around the world, we need to standardize what we're doing, and we need to be able to scale quickly. And the only way we can do that is together collaboratively.
Like earlier we said, data is really important for vertical farming, and you need to standardize in the end to get the data, and that's probably clear. But what do you really want to create with data? The whole vision is actually that you want to create a digital copy of your farm, so a digital twin. You can make a digital twin of your building, of your process, but also even of the crop, what you can develop. So you have a whole digital copy, but you continually improving your farm via data. It is in the end goal of what you're reaching. So I think to realize that how are you getting it, the most critical part in design is to getting the data is in the designing phase. So what we're now seeing is that we are really looking how can you develop the right architecture from the beginning, because if you are building a farm and it's out there, you cannot change it anymore. You can only spend your money once. So if that farm is not you cannot operate it good and you not have the profitability. When it's out there, you're too late. So you need to know already upfront, if you even on the construction moment, you can already calculate your whole business model upfront. If I want to have a farm built, for example, on location X, Y, Z, what is it for impact? So with data, you can really know all the details out there, and it makes it also safe to invest in the end in these kind of business models.
Yeah, talking about investment in data and innovation. So Ellis and Michele, you said innovation is at the heart, is at the core of your businesses. Then how would the data that Tisha's farm would produce help you to innovate further from the point where you already are?
Fundamentally, the data generation, it's starting from a request, and the request is typically an innovation based, and this is the core idea in the new development of the sensor. So a need and an innovation. This is what we usually are doing, and often mixed. Often we put together the requirements from the customer with our ideas, our innovative thinking, and we bring to the market the solution and the system that help.
Sorry, I have a comment. So when you think about vertical farms and when we have closed systems where we're not sharing with our ecosystem, okay, if I'm a vertical farm and I buy a system and it doesn't work, I'm going to internally figure out how to fix it myself. I'm never going to give that feedback to the OEM, to the equipment provider. Because if I do, it's going to make their business stronger. They're going to go sell it to my competitor. I've got the inferior product. If I'm building an ecosystem and we're all working together, I'm giving all of these equipment providers the feedback. I'm telling them what's working, what's not. They're helping me innovate on the next generation. It's a completely different mindset, a completely different way to think about how we uplift the industry and how we uplift this whole ecosystem together to figure it out.
That sounds counterintuitive in the first place, but as we discussed, there's trust that is the glue that keeps us all together.
Yeah, it's what to add. I think I fully agree. For us, the data is key. Of course, we develop not only lighting, we also give advice on how to grow with LED lighting and how the light settings should be, but also the climate settings, the irrigation for nutrients. And we can give that away and then wait until Tish calls and says, hey, the lights are not working. Well, thank God you never called. Or hey, the lettuce is not growing. And then start having the discussions. But if we share that data, we can monitor. We can see how our lighting is performing, whether it's whether the lettuce is growing or not, or we can increase lighting, we should change something. Maybe we can dim the lighting to reduce energy costs, and all that data is continuously gathered, and by continuously sharing that, you can optimize your cultivation process much faster, much easier, and maybe then you do give away something, but you get so much more in return. And if we innovate faster, you get a better efficacy, better lighting to the market at a better price, hopefully, and then in the end, we all benefit. So it's for me it's a no-brainer. But okay, that's my point of view.
Sounds that the whole is more than the sum of its parts. And that's maybe what we want to conclude for this panel, and then opening the mic to everybody that might have a question in the audience. So, is there any question you want to ask the dear panelists? There you go. And did the mic go?
So really fascinating discussion, of course, right up the alley for FarmTech Society. And I wondered, how you deal with people or companies who really don't necessarily want to scale. We do see that we are in a niche of an agriculture production system. And in this niche, there are companies who are actually quite happy to be in this niche. And they don't really see how they could benefit from a scaling or from a, let's say, transformation. And so where do we find the arguments to kind of motivate somebody?
Anybody who wants to answer to this? Rick, maybe? Otherwise I do.
I can answer this one. I think, well, at least what we see is that, of course, there is a niche that will also not change, but in the end, if you want to develop new areas like vertical farming, there's more out there. We have, of course, challenges. We see that, for example, data is becoming more important because you want to grow more sustainable, you want to include new technologies, and I think with vertical farming itself, the whole system is changing, different than a greenhouse. In a greenhouse, you're growing crops. But in a vertical farm, you do basically the whole production around it also. So you have the grow zone plus all the rest in one building. So if you want to include this even with your ERP system, your whole supply chain, shipping this directly to the supermarket, the players out there, they should change. This is a different mindset. So also the technology is changing. So of course, when you're entering new fields, there are always things changing. So I think, but it's also giving a lot of possibilities. So I think it's not always negative. It's just something new, and new doesn't have to be negative. So yeah.
I have a comment really fast. So even if you don't want to scale, who doesn't want to make more money in the farm? And when you think about data and digitalization, what you measure is what you can improve on. And to be able to drive profitability, drive efficiency, drive performance with your customer, you have to be able to measure. And so even if you're not looking to scale and have a global footprint with your vertical farm or even your greenhouse, you still need to be able to have consistent data so that you can measure and you can drive profitability in your business.
Absolutely. And maybe to come back to this point that is a little bit underlying. So when you're a niche player, people connotate it to you're a smaller player. That is actually irrelevant, whether you're a small player or a big player. It's exactly what Tisha says. You want to improve, you want to become, or you want to stay competitive. You want to use other people's wisdom and domain expertise to stay ahead of the curve and not being vanished in tomorrow's time. So that's why I can only invite everybody to be part of an ecosystem. And the story these days is only make or join. It's not being not part of an ecosystem. And we all know that from our own private lives. If you have a good social system around you, you're better off. That's why maybe we get away from you need to be a large player. That is not the point. Yeah? As small as you can be, benefit from the optimizing the topics that sit in data. Any other question that we answer for you today? Oh, there you go.
It's a bit of a vague question, but if you want to design a facility from scratch, it's a lot easier to create a standardized ecosystem that can talk to each other. The reality for most people, and this is personally true for me, is that by the time you kind of fight your way to having a facility running, you're in the position where you have many different. Sorry, can you hear me okay now? Okay. Yeah, so most people I think are in a position where by the time they've got their head above the water to think how to optimize, they have a big group of technologies that don't talk to each other well. By that point it's too late to plan it from scratch. When you talk to people, they suggest that either you get rid of all the technology and start from scratch, or that you try and kind of get these different technology planners to talk to each other. Neither of which scenario is really ideal. I just wondered what your thoughts are on that, whether it's possible to retrospectively get technology to talk to each other.
So what you describe is a beautiful brownfield approach. You have something and now you want to make it talk to each other. Maybe Rick, you try answering and then
Indeed, if you have already something, it's always more difficult in general to optimize and to get all systems talking. So we see that, of course, in the whole industrial automation market, you have brownfields and greenfield. I think a lot of the vertical farms out there, they are being built newly. So we're talking a total new market that is coming out there. So it's actually easier to change than already an existing market. So then now it's really now it's the turn to the suppliers to also unite. So that's, I think, what you see now is that we see, let's say, okay, it's not only the consumers or the grower, they cannot buy the equipment that is all talking to each other. So it's also the responsibility of the suppliers that are making these systems that are, and also the machine builders. And also, I would say everybody in that ecosystem that making solutions that in the end being implemented, they should collaborate and saying, okay, what we're doing is actually not helping the 80 acres or other companies because they are really struggling. And then, of course, if you have the system, if you're buying all these systems, of course, then it will be super difficult to change it because then, you have bought a system and it's not changing. Of course, in the future, if you have all IoT systems that's running on software, you could change it on the fly. But it's like future music. So I would say, For now, it's really critical that the ecosystem starts collaborating. The steps are being made, but we're still really in the early stages. So that's why there is also a need for collaboration and needs to join with other companies, because the moment is now. And if we really want to scale vertical farming, or in general markets that are contributing to sustainable food production, the responsibility lays with everybody, also with the suppliers like Siemens, Signify, SIG.
I think it's the equipment suppliers through the ecosystem. I don't want to say it's a responsibility, but part of what I'm asking for is, how is there a bridge, right? So we see this end state beautiful world where everything is talking and everything is constant and standard. But in the meantime, I have this other equipment. So what's the bridge? What's the app? What's the way for us to unlock the potential of the product, of the equipment that we've already purchased? And I think we're working on that solution. That's part of what the ecosystem also needs to be working on.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what I also see is that a lot of startups in general, like a lot of smaller companies, they are struggling because there are so many solutions in general out there. What to use? It's a jungle out of the solutions. So I think also by creating ecosystems, smaller or communities, talking about what is working, what is not working. Because if I would be a startup and looking for a technology, you can go to a fair, you can look online, but you will not end up with the right solution, or because you can only do it once, right? So I think the power lays in the collaboration and learning from each other. And then in the end, of course, everybody, and then you touching on IP, the IP is in the end what you create, what is your solution. But what the technology, what kind of motor you are using to operate it, that should be not different than the rest. The rest is, you are a grower, so you're growing, that's your specialty. You should not worry about what kind of technology your system is running on, because that should be standardized. That's a little bit the vision that we have.
And maybe because standardization that doesn't need to, or that does not seem to help you right now, but this is the topic of software-defined automation, where you add more and more of the automation data and languages and semantics and ontologies into one library. And having then this one library makes it easier to downscale and look into the brownfield and say, okay, these are data that I already know. This is the language that has already been added to the library, and that's exactly what I said. Make or join is the story, and making for smaller companies to create their own ecosystem is a heck to do. So that's why also the invitation to join bigger ecosystems that have already started sorting out exactly the issue that you report on.
Maybe one thing to add also, of course there is technology that is, for example, translating all the different systems. So that is of course out there, that you have an IoT unit, for example, that is reading all the different suppliers and translate it into one single protocol. So that is of course out there. So there are of course solutions to overcome that. If you have already a system running out there, that you're not lost, that you need to rebuild your factory. Of course there are tons of solutions. But then it's really still the importance of knowing what kind of solutions, how am I doing this, that if I have already all these systems in place, I'm not lost. There are already solutions out there, but in the end, then still knowing that you need to know how am I doing it and what am I then doing, that it still makes sense for the bigger story.
Any other question from the audience? There you go.
Hello, Mark Shima. Can you share more perspective on some of the goals for the field lab and how that's going to be a showcase for collaboration?
So the field lab, very excited about it, is a place where equipment providers, seed companies, everyone can kind of come together to be able to help ideate and work on new technology, innovation, thinking about how to solve some of the biggest problems that we have in vertical farming, because we start with open field, then we have greenhouse. Greenhouse doesn't quite fit what we need for vertical farming. It gets us close, but not where we need to go. So having a place where everyone can kind of work together and solve those problems and get feedback is the vision that I have for the field lab. And it's part of the ecosystem. So it's a physical representation of what we're trying to build with Accelerator and the ecosystem. don't know if anybody else.
Yeah, maybe I can add to that. Of course, we have our own field lab for lighting and for growing in Eindhoven. We call it Growwise Research Center. But there we can only work on what we think is the best. And I think the field lab gives us the opportunity to try out something and get immediate feedback from the user, from the other suppliers delivering to that system, and therefore again accelerating innovation. And maybe you give away something, but you get much more in return and much faster, and again here we go, smarter. So for me it's an extension of our own playing field, but also a security to be there in the future, to make something and to innovate something that is applicable, that is useful, that's tested already, that's proven by vertical farmers. So it's for me it's an extension of the play field, and I'm really looking forward to start building. Anything to add, Michele?
Yes, I can add just one point. In our internal process for the product development, the last phase before the product launch is the so-called field test. And in this stage, we find a partner or customer that are interested to test the sensor before the launch. And this part is really interesting, because often happen that we find opportunity to increase the added value of the sensor thanks to the feedback from the customer. So in the collaboration direction, this is still a good point to find out something that maybe was not considered during the standard development or the standard designing, and can come later on in the final stage.
Very good, thank you. Maybe one last question from the audience before we conclude the session? Anyone? Good. Then I'm thanking heartily Tisha, Ellis, Michele and Rick for this nice panel that we had. And maybe, the Bildschirm presentation is not longer on. I had a last slide. So if you want to go deeper, if you have more questions that you do not want to share with the audience because of IP reasons, you can find us at the Signify booth in hall 3.2, which is above. Oh, flip one more, she said, there you go. And you can learn, of course, more about vertical farming and controlled agricultural environment on accelerator.siemens.com. But you will find us up there at the Signify booth, and welcoming you and your questions and dialogue that we will start. Thank you so much for today. Thank you so much, beautiful panelists, to be with me on stage today.